Hello everyone, this is Umesh, History and Internal Security faculty at Manifest IAS, and today I'm going to discuss the questions of internal security and disaster management which have come in paper 3, which has been conducted recently by UPSC mains in 2020. Okay, in 2021 the mains have been conducted, but the exam is UPSC 2020. So the mains paper, it had a total of 4 questions on internal security and 1 question on disaster management. More or less the questions are very simple. Okay, they are very straightforward, and you need not actually think too much about the questions. But the thing is, if you have good quality points in these questions, then automatically the marks that you are going to get are higher. Okay, for this reason, you need to have good information or high level content for these questions. And if you have high level content, scoring marks in these questions is a simple matter. So first and foremost, the question which has been asked is with respect to the 9th question, that is discuss different types of cyber crimes and measures required to be taken to fight the menace. Okay, cyber security is something which has been mentioned in your syllabus sheet. Okay, that is the reason why they have asked this question, very simple question and straightforward question. Okay, people, many of the students, they prepared at a very high level for internal security too, but UPSC, it did not give very tough questions of internal security, very simple questions it has given. But this trend, okay, you cannot say that this is going to be the trend of internal security questions in the future too, because last year they asked a question on overground workers, okay, which is a new concept, So that's the reason why in internal security also you need to be careful. But this year's paper, definitely it is very simple. That's the reason why I'm going to wind up the discussion also very soon. So first and foremost, the question is on what? Discuss different types of cyber crimes and measures required to be taken to fight the menace. So what are the different types of cyber crimes? So first and foremost, in introduction, if you give a statistic, that would be a good introduction for this question. Okay, McAfee study, and nearly $600 billion, okay, annually is lost because of cyber crimes in global GDP. So which is a huge figure. Okay, so first and foremost, you can write this introduction. Then after that, the types of cyber crime. First one is hacking. Okay, hacking is wherein a computer is broken into. Then after that, there is a possibility of theft or piracy. There is also one more type of a cybercrime where copyrights are not respected and directly your data is stolen. Then, and after that, you have one more type of cybercrime like cyber stalking. Okay, cyber stalking is online harassment. Then along with that, identity theft. Okay, identity theft is usually done in order to, okay, usually through phishing. Okay, through phishing, they pick up the identity of individuals, and then they use this identity in order to use their debit cards, credit cards, or their bank accounts. Then along with that, if you see, okay, there is attacks of malicious software. Okay, last year we had one malicious software attack, not last year, 3 years before. There is WannaCry. Okay, wherein it was a denial of services. Okay, denial of services attack is known as WannaCry. Okay, that is also one of the kinds. So malicious software is installed. Then sometimes in cybercrime there is a child soliciting and abuse. This is also one more major problem. Through social media platforms, the children are being solicited and abused. Then along with that, computer vandalism, wherein the purpose of the attack is not theft but the destruction of the cyber infrastructure. This is usually part of cyber war. Okay, computer vandalism is also taken up. Then along with that, if you see, there were other things like cyber terrorism is one more kind of attack. Then denial of services attacks, usually on critical infrastructure it is done. Then cyberbullying is one more problem because of the anonymity provided by the computer interface. Cyberbullying is also one more major problem which is happening in the society today. So in this fashion, there are many threats from the cyber domain, and automatically, so this forms the first part of the question. You can give some examples like Pegasus attack, WannaCry. Okay, all of these things you can give. Then after that, okay, after that, if you see, after cyber crimes, the second part of the question is what measures required for cybersecurity. So measures required at cybersecurity also, if you can structure it properly at a personal level, what are the changes that are required at technological level, what are the changes required legal level, administrative level, and international conventions. So all these levels, if you write, okay, some 4 to 5 dimensions in this, it would be a good answer rather than just blurting out some points. Okay, with respect to the measures, it would be better for you to organize the answer properly. In the first part also, we organized the answer with respect to the various types of cyber crimes. We gave a statistical introduction. Then after that, we are talking about the measures and measures too. So the personal level antivirus software, secure passwords, secure networks, and trusted payment gateways should be opted. So in this fashion, you can first and foremost talk about the personal thing. Then the second one is a technological. In technological, you have two-factor authentication, authorization, data localization, and separation of networks in sensitive domains. So all of these things are the technological interventions which can be brought into the picture. Okay, two-factor authorization and data localization mandates, then legal changes need to update Information Technology Act of 2000 because it is outdated, and the cyber domain, it is fast evolving, and the national cyber security policy also needs to be relooked at. Okay, this way you can give two examples. Then administrative changes, policing for capacity development, there is a need for capacity development, and information education and campaign is required. And all our administrators, okay, they should be empowered in order to handle cyber threats and cyber attacks. So there is a need for computer training for our administrators, policing action. Okay, then along with that, there were many different things. Okay, like I4C. Okay, coordination for cyber security, it has been started by the central government. So in this fashion, many organizations were also started. International conventions with respect to cyber security are Budapest Convention and Tallinn Manual for Cyber Warfare. Both of these things you can quote, and you can say that, okay, the defense in depth philosophy of this Budapest Convention, it has a concept called defense in depth. Okay, defense in depth is how you are going to protect your cyber systems against possible attacks. Okay, so this concept also you can bring in. And finally, in conclusion, you can say that, okay, by using all these measures, India can definitely become the digital power of the world if its cyberspace is properly secured. That way, if you can write, then it will be a good conclusion. Now we're going to move to the next question, the second question in this internal security. Okay, 10th question, for effective border area management, discuss the steps required to be taken to deny local support to militants and also suggest ways to manage favorable perception among the locals. There are two parts to this question. What are the steps needed to deny local support to militants is the first one. Okay, whereas suggest ways to manage favorable perception among the locals is the second part of the question. So two parts to the question. So first and foremost, in the introduction, you can write that definitely in border areas, the local people sometimes they tend to support infiltrators from other side of the border. Okay, and these supporters are usually known as overground workers for terrorist organizations. OGWs. Last year there was a question on OGWs, so you can use this same idea. Okay, so local support is leading to unfavorable border management that is creating a lot of problem for India too. So that way you can write the first section. And what are the steps required in order to deny local support to militants? First and foremost, okay, first and foremost you can say is that address the root cause of alienation among affected communities. Okay, in border areas, that let's suppose there are affected communities, what is the root problem? Let's suppose that the economic poverty is the major driver for supporting infiltration. Then economic prosperity, if you bring in economic development, automatically the problem will be solved. Okay, let's suppose if the identity of the people, okay, across borders, if it is leading to more insurgency, then automatically what you have to do, you have to integrate the local population through confidence building measures, CBMs, in order to let them integrate into the national mainstream. So first and foremost, what you have to do is address the root cause of alienation among affected communities. And the next one, what you're going to talk about is you have to set up fast track courts. Okay, fast track courts in order to prosecute the overground workers very soon and arrest them so as to stem the problem in its bud. Then after that, if you see, the intelligence infrastructure should be very strong. RAW and IB should coordinate with each other in order to counter this local support to the terrorist organizations. Then along with that, you have to combat, okay, financing of terrorism through CFT cell, okay, combating financing of terrorism and FATF through these kind of measures. So you have to even counter combating of financing of terrorism, terror finance also you have to nip it in the bud. Then along with the comprehensive integrated border management system, okay, you know about CIBMs, okay, so CIBMs you can include as a point here in order to tell that it is also one of the steps which can be taken. Then the corrupt officials, recently we have seen the example of Punjab DSP, Jammu DSP, he supported the Pathankot terrorist attack. So these kind of people, they should be prosecuted immediately under NSA and Public Safety Act. Okay, these kind of stringent laws should be there. Okay, you should address the problem of alienation first. If the alienation problem is not addressed, if still there is support, then you have to strike at the finances of terrorists or the overground workers of terrorists. Then after striking at the finances, you need to have fast track courts in order to prosecute them. Very strict laws should be implemented in the local regions in order to stem the support. Okay, so all of these measures that measures you can take, and intelligence infrastructure should become strong, and border management should be based on technological mediation of CIBMS. So this way you can suggest many steps, okay, many steps in order to counter local support to terrorist organizations. Then after that, how to manage favorable perception among the locals. Okay, this is the second part of the question. So even though it is seemingly easy, it is a little difficult. Okay, how to manage favorable perception? First and foremost, what you have to do is you have to fill the development deficit in the regions. Usually most of the border regions, they are present in hilly terrains, or they are present in wastelands like Ladakh region, or hilly terrains like Jammu and Kashmir, or thick jungles and forests like Northeast. Because of this terrain, the people have a lot of development deficit, and first this development deficit has to be fulfilled with respect to human development and infrastructure development. Both the things have to be done in the process. Then this concept of inclusive border management policies should come into the forefront. Okay, we should not have a look at the border people as possible infiltrators, but you have to look at them as possible extended arms of the state. So that is how you can manage the borders in an inclusive border management policies. And village defense and development committees should be established in the border villages, so that they will be monitoring the movement of infiltrators, and they will be function as extended arms to the security forces. Then along with that, you have to review the field procedures, because most of the times the local population, they are adversely affected because of the field procedures that have been taken up by the security forces, particularly in AFSPA, search and seizure measures which have been taken up in a harsh fashion. This itself has alienated the public. So that's the reason why the procedures should be, field procedures of border guarding forces, they have to be relooked at. They're training for a more ethical and clinical force. Okay, because sometimes the forces excesses are also breeding the local population to, or making them tilt towards terrorism. That's the reason why, okay, the measures like AFSPA, okay, in the measures like AFSPA, there should be changes, and there should be more ethical and clinical force. And develop a community oriented force. Okay, you develop a community oriented force through civic action programs. Okay, usually the military takes up this civic action programs, wherein the local population is taken into the mainstream by the army with the help of its development funds, okay, which is known as CAF. Okay, civic action programs, you have to take up the civic action programs. Then whatever the grievances are there against the BGF, okay, border guarding force, if the locals have any grievances, they should be addressed immediately in order to build confidence among them. So in this fashion, in order to build a positive perception, you have to take up all these steps. Okay, I'll just brief again once more on all these things. Development deficit should be filled, inclusive border management, village defense and development committees, review field procedures, training of more ethical force, develop a community oriented force. Then along with that, you have to monitor the grievance redressal and civic action programs. All of these things, steps you can take in order to build the confidence of local population with respect to the border guarding force. So all these steps you can write, and finally in conclusion you have to write that, see, borders should be looked at finally as places of opportunity. If this perception guides the government, then automatically all the border problems will be solved. Okay, borders should be seen as portals of opportunity rather than restricted entry points. Okay, this way if you conclude, that would be a good answer. And this finishes the discussion on this internal security question. And the next question that I'm going to talk about is with respect to what are the determinants of left-wing extremism in eastern part of India. What strategy should government of India, civil administration and security forces adopt to counter the threat in affected areas? In total, there are 4 parts to this question. What are the determinants of left-wing extremism? First part. Second part is government of India's role, civil administration's role. Third part, okay, this is second one, this is third one, and fourth one is security forces role. So in this fashion, there are 4 parts to this question. So first and foremost, in the introduction, you can write, or you can state the statement of Indian Prime Minister in 2006, Manmohan Singh. He said that Naxalism is the biggest security threat for India. Okay, the biggest security threat for India is Naxalism. Okay, this was a statement made by Dr. Manmohan Singh in 2005. From then to now, okay, the Naxal problem has, in fact, it has increased, or it has metamorphized. It has changed a lot from 2005 to now. So in the introduction, you can write this kind of statement, and then what are the determinant of left-wing extremism in eastern part of India? So they are asking specifically the eastern part of India. Eastern part of India means more or less you can take from West Bengal region to Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, okay, along with Bihar if you want to include, then Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. All of these sections from Pasupati to Tirupati, the entire red corridor region, more or less it falls in the eastern part of India. So what are the factors which led to extremism or Naxalism in the eastern part of India? First and foremost, okay, the major problem is underdevelopment of these regions, particularly West Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. The human development indices, they are poorer than rest of the countries, So automatically, because of the underdevelopment, that is one problem. Second problem is because of the geography. Okay, geography provides a advantage to the Naxal forces in order to do guerrilla warfare. That's the reason why the terrain advantages of Abusmad forest, all of these examples you can write. Okay, or the Datakaranya forest region, which is present in Chhattisgarh, that provides a safe haven to the terrorists. Okay, so the geography, then tribal population. Predominantly, the eastern part of India, it is populated by tribal population who are usually at the lower end of development process in India. Because of this lower end of development process of tribal people in India, they are automatically susceptible to these extreme form of ideologies like Naxalism. So that third point you can write. Then internal class structure. Okay, most of the Eastern Indian structure, okay, if you see, more or less it was under Jamindari settlement, because of which there is a disproportionate, okay, inequalities in the society. The class structure is very steep. Class structure is very steep, and because of this reason also there is the possibility of moving towards Naxalism. Then history of exploitation. Okay, this region, it had a very great, not great history for that matter. It has a history of exploitation of the lower sections of the population. Particularly, take the case of Odisha, okay, or Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, where the elite, okay, the bureaucratic Jamindari police elite, okay, they exploited the local population. That's the reason why there is more sympathy towards Naxalism. Then alienation of forest land. Okay, here, because the development projects which have been taken up in these regions, the forest land has been alienated from the hands of the tribal population. Okay, because of this, there was development displacement, and this development led displacement, it induced Naxalism in these regions. Then failure of land reforms. The land reforms were not very successful, and the origin of the Naxal movement is also an outcome of failure of land reforms. Charu Mazumdar, okay, Communist Party of India, Maoist at the point of time, sorry, Communist Party of India, Marxist Leninist, he started because of this failure of land reforms. Then after that, there were many other political parties like People's War Group in Andhra Pradesh. Then along with that, Maoist Central Coordination Unit, which is present in Bihar. So all of these units, they started because of failure of land reforms. Then because of resource curse, okay, most of the eastern India, they have rich mineral resources and forest resources, but in spite of these resources, the development of these regions is very poor, which is known as resource curse. Okay, usually in international parlance it is called resource curse. So these regions also have this resource curse. So in this fashion, you can give the determinants for Naxalism, okay, different determinants for like left-wing extremism. All these factors you can give. Then what are the strategies that the government of India should adopt? Okay, so what here the question, even though it is asking what strategies should the government adopt, you have to quote what strategies the government has already adopted. Okay, you need not be too innovative and create your own points. There are many measures which have been taken by the central government, state governments at various level, and the various administrators, they have taken up a lot of steps, and ARC also has given many recommendations. So all of these things you have to quote and write your answer. Don't use your own intelligence in writing the points. Okay, the central government should be more empathetic towards the cause of tribals. These kind of things, they are not going to work because they are too beating around the bush, and they are more ethics like points. But here the internal security question, it is talking about what are the programs which have been already implemented by the central government. So first and foremost, there is Operation Samadhan. Okay, you know the extended version of it, like smart leadership, aggressive strategy, motivation and training, actionable intelligence, dashboard based KPIs and KRAs, harnessing technology, action plan for each theatre, and no access to financing. All of these things are known as a Samadhan program. If you just quote Samadhan, it would be sufficient. Then there is a separate head in the budget called security related expenditure scheme, which is used for the development of northeast regions and for Naxal affected regions. So you have to quote first Samadhan, security related expenditure. Then special infrastructure scheme is there in order to build better connectivity, okay, telephone connectivity, road connectivity, and internet connectivity. All of these kind of things, they are being supported here. Then along with that, there was integrated action plan of planning commission. By planning commission and integrated action plan, we talked about the development deficit in these regions, and it wanted to provide funds for this. And then there is a civic action program of the CAPs, okay, civic action program of Central Armed Forces, CAFs. So all of these things, they are leading to development in these regions. So all of these are the strategies which are adopted by government of India. Next, after that, if you see civil administration, what it has to do, civil administration, first and foremost, it has to do is it has to use the backward region grant fund, okay, which is being given to these Naxal affected regions in order to build better infrastructure in the region. Then along with that, they have to focus on better implementation of Forest Rights Act and Land Acquisition Act of 2013, because the main causative factor for the Naxal movement is land alienation. So Forest Right Act, it provides for 4 hectares of land to every traditional forest dwelling community. So automatically you have to better implement Forest Rights Act and Land Acquisition Act. Then skill development in the local region with the help of schemes like Roshni scheme, okay, you have to use. Then along with that, capacity building of government personnel. All of these are from here. There are recommendations of Administrative Reforms Commission, second Administrative Reform Commission, it talked about capacity building of government personnel. They have to be sensitive towards the needs of tribal population and the alienated sections of the society. Then along with that, you have to do capacity building of local bodies with the help of acts like PISA Act, okay, Panchayat Raj Extension Schedule Areas Act, okay, which has been passed in 1996. That also has to be effectively implemented. And capacity building of civil society, because civil society organizations are play a very critical role in countering Naxalism in these regions. They build the trust deficit which is present between the state and the Naxal affected regions. So civil society organizations, they play a critical role. You can quote an example with respect to Ramakrishna Mission schools in most of the tribal belts in central India. They are working to build the trust deficit between, or to bridge the trust deficit between the population and the government. So this way you can quote this capacity building of civil society too. Then after this, okay, if you see what measures the security forces need to adapt to counter threat in affected areas. So security measures, security forces, the third side heading that you have to write. So security forces, they are taking up measures like, okay, first and foremost, they are taking up the measures like access to road opening parties. Okay, road opening parties are very important. They usually work on the forefront in Naxal affected regions. So we have to provide more support to these road opening parties. Then along with that, okay, UAV or mini UAV, UAV based or technological interventions with respect to UAV, helicopter surveillance, okay, all of these things, under mobile phone tracking, satellite phone tracking, all of these things should be provided to the security forces. Then along with that, joint task force should be established among different state governments in order to for better coordination among the security forces. Then along with that, prevention of money laundering should be implemented with a very strict vigil on in these regions in order to counter Naxal financing. Naxal financing is usually done through extortion and money laundering, and these measures should be taken up. Then along with that, there is need to, okay, build specialized forces like Greyhounds of Andhra Pradesh. You can quote this example, Greyhounds of Andhra Pradesh. It is considered to be a very successful model in countering the Naxal threat. Then along with that, okay, along with that, they also have to, okay, they also have to cut at the finances of Naxals, okay, and they have to take up a proactive approach. Okay, here the security forces measures you can write in terms of coordination measures between various state departments, establishment of separate force like Greyhounds, then technological interventions like UAVs, phone tracking, okay, helicopter surveillance, all of these things you can write. And finally, in conclusion, you can say that, okay, Naxalism is one of the major threats which is haunting India, and a mere law and order approach towards a Naxal problem is not going to solve or provide a solution to the problem. What you have to do is you have to go beyond mere law and order, and developmental functions should precede, okay, implementation of law and order. So that way you have to write the conclusion, and then it will be a good answer. There are 4 parts to this answer. If you address all 4 parts, you will get good marks. Next question I'm going to discuss is with respect to this, analyze the internal security threats and transborder crimes along Myanmar, Bangladesh and Pakistan borders, including line of control. Also discuss the role played by various security forces in this regard. So 4 parts to this question also. First, Myanmar border, what are the challenges? Bangladesh border, what are the challenges? Pakistan border, what are the challenges? Then along with what are the role played by various security forces in this border management. Simple question. Okay, this question is also simple. I think more or less everyone who has prepared for internal security, they might have read about the unique challenges which are present in each and every border. But here, various security forces, what is their role? In this second part of the question, if you identify which border security force is guarding, or which border guarding force is exactly present in the said border, if you know, then it would be a good answer. So in the first part, you have to give an introduction saying that India has a very long land border, and it has a very conflict prone neighbors, which creates a lot of instability within India too. So that's the reason why our border management is one of the important things in order to protect national security. You can write. Then Indo-Myanmar border, what are the problems? Okay, free movement across the Indo-Myanmar border has been practiced from times immemorial. Okay, because of which region like free movement regime or FMR. Free movement regime is present in Indo-Myanmar border in many of the states. So free movement regime is there, because of which there is the problem of drug menace because of Golden Triangle. Illegal trade activities also are done. Contraband items are moving from one region to another. Okay, smuggling, then gun running. Then along with that, there are insurgency groups which use the territories of both India and Myanmar, like NSCN-K. Okay, NSCN Kaplang. Okay, it is a Naga group which actually does insurgency activities both in India and Myanmar. So NSCNK, then along with that you can write about the terrain also. The terrain, it is very difficult to monitor because of the thick jungles which are present in northeast, and the terrain is also, and the Indo-Myanmar border is also not thoroughly fenced because of the long stretch of the border and because of its mountainous character. It is very difficult to monitor Indo-Myanmar border. That's the reason why, okay, the countries which are antithetical to India's national security, like China and Pakistan, they are also supporting these terrorist organizations to flourish in northeast India. So Myanmar is the first one. Then the second one is Bangladesh. When it comes to Bangladesh, the main problems are cattle trade, illegal immigration, shifting borders, okay, because of the riverine territory which is present in India-Bangladesh border, because of which reason there is a shifting of territories. Then along with that, flood management is one more problem, and ISA support to insurgency groups of northeast through Bangladesh and fake currency. All of these are the things which are happening in Indo-Bangladesh border. Then after that, India-Pakistan border also you can write about. India-Pakistan border, okay, drugs and illicit arms, state-sponsored terrorism, fake currency, indoctrination, overground workers and lone wolf attacks, militancy in Punjab and Golden Crescent. All of these are, you can elaborate upon each point a little, okay, and you can say that all of these are the problems in India-Pakistan border. Then after that, role of various security forces in this regard. Okay, what are the security forces which are guarding various borders? First and foremost, Indo-Myanmar border, it is being guarded by Assam Rifles, whereas India-Pakistan border, it is being guarded by border security force on one side and Indian Army's Rashtriya Rifles on the other. Then when it comes to Bangladesh border, it is BSF's mandate in order to guard the Bangladesh border. So in this fashion, there are various security forces which are given the mandate of different regions. And what do they do? They promote a sense of security among the people who are living in border areas, prevent transboundary crime, prevent smuggling and any other illegal activity, and confidence building amongst local population, and they also oversee this new CIBMS. So in this fashion, you can write the points with respect to the role played by these security forces in the border region. Okay, don't just confine yourself to the security functions. You elaborate upon, okay, the confidence building measures, the developmental functions which are being taken up by these security forces. Then along with that, if you want, you can even add, okay, BRO, okay, border road organization also you can include and say that it is playing a critical role in expansion of the infrastructure in border regions. Then along with that, if you want, okay, you can quote or okay, this also you can do, border roads organization you can do. This way you can finish this answer. And finally, in conclusion, what do you want to do? Okay, in conclusion, definitely the hotspots where this transboundary crimes and internal security threats are emerging to India, they have to be identified, and proper or clinical analysis of these threats has to be done, and at the same time they have to be countered with effective intelligence of IB and RAW. This way, if you conclude, it will be a good answer. Then we'll move to the next question. The next question is what? Discuss the recent measures initiated in disaster management by Government of India departing from the earlier reactive approach. See, this question is a very, very old question. Okay, very old question. So the reactive approach of the government was present before the passing of National Disaster Management Act. Okay, National Disaster Management Act, which is passed in 2005. Before that, Indian government used to have a reactive approach towards the disasters. Okay, from this reactive approach, we move to a new approach called proactive approach. Okay, from reactive approach to proactive approach. And what are the measures which have been taken up from this reactive to proactive approach? You can use many structures for this answer. Okay, many structures for this answer. Okay, first and foremost, in the introduction, you have there is vulnerability and hazard happens, then it will result to disaster. Okay, and if the vulnerability of a given region is reduced, vulnerability plus hazard is equal to disaster. So if you want to reduce the disaster risk, you have to reduce the vulnerability of a given region. So this way, if you can introduce, it will be a good one. Then after that, because it is just a 10-marker question, you have to just enumerate the points with respect to what are the various measures which are being taken up by the government with respect to the proactive measures. So with respect to the proactive measures, you can take up the disaster management cycle with respect to PMP-RRR. What is PMP-RRR? Okay, first and foremost, P means prevention of a disaster. Second one is mitigation. Third one is preparedness. Fourth one is rescue. Fifth one is rehabilitation, and sixth one is reconstruction. So in this fashion, in this cycle, disaster management cycle, you have to handle the disasters. So first and foremost, you have to see the prevention cycle. So in prevention, okay, cyclone preparedness. Okay, what are the recent measures? Technological advancements with respect to the cyclone preparedness, with respect to ISRO. All of these things you can quote in the first one. Then mitigation. Okay, for mitigation, we have passed building codes, fire safety norms, hazard management and planning. So all of these things are taken up because of the mitigation measures which are being taken up by the government. Then preparedness for disaster preparedness, mock drills, National Disaster Response Fund, communication networks, and civil defense volunteers. All of them are used for preparedness. Okay, these are the recent steps which have been taken by the government. Then when it comes to rescue, okay, disaster force has been set up at state and central level, and emergency centers were also started. So this way you can write the third part. Then rehabilitation is with respect to Chennai model and Hyderabad model, wherein direct benefit transfer has been done to the adverse effect, done to the victims of the urban floods. Okay, direct benefit transfer you can write in rehabilitation measure. Then last one is reconstruction. In reconstruction, okay, we have to build use insurance systems and disaster resilient infrastructure. These are the two important measures which are to be taken up in this reconstruction phase. So in this fashion, there are a total of 6 things, and in these 6 things, what are the new initiatives which have been taken up by the government? If you write, that would be a good answer. And finally, in conclusion, you have to say that the Sendai's framework's policy of disaster risk reduction should be the final guiding motto of the government. This way, okay, this is a rather simple question, that's why I did not discuss it too much. Okay, but if you follow the structure of PMP RRR, it would be a good answer. That's it for the day. Okay, thank you for your time, and have a great day.